Welcome to Business Africa. I am Ruth Lago. Here are the headlines. The average inflation rate in Africa is expected to reach 13.5% this year. While 20 countries are on the verge of excessive debt, is it still possible to avoid the stagnation of our economies? In Nigeria, the business climate is gloomy and uncertain. From a lack of reforms to limited infrastructure, obstacles to growth are numerous. Companies are calling out to authorities in charge of the sector. And in Rwanda, the digitalization of the continent was at the heart of the most important internet connectivity event in Kigali. Sub-Saharan Africa's debt now stands at about 60% of the GDP, while 40% of countries in the region are experiencing a double-digit inflation. The cost of essential food is one of the drivers of this spike. 50% of staples making up the consumer basket is imported.
As a result of rising commodity prices, in this case, that of energy and basic commodities, public debt and inflation have reached levels not seen before in decades in Africa. The World Bank estimates the debt for the region and that of countries in the Maghreb at $1 trillion in 2021, while the IMF put the inflation rate at 8.9% as of July 2022. States are caught in the vice between Western private lenders and Chinese capital to buy infrastructure that was crucially lacking. Dependent on their exports, cocoa, coffee, gold, oil, etc., these countries receive only a few dividends, which do not affect purchasing power. Analysts believe even if some countries have reduced their taxes on food or fuel during this period, without thriving industries, it is difficult to see their immediate effects. Growth south of the Sub-Saharan region is expected to fall from 4.7% to 3.6%, according to the IMF forecast in 2022. The common framework sought by the G20 to restructure the debt of developing countries is stalled, with the Europeans blaming China.
To solve this issue, experts are urging states to step up measures to increase their revenues. I now welcome international economist Magai Gai. Thank you for joining us from Dakar. Could you tell us why African states are mired in this debt crisis?
The World Bank estimates that the total debt of African countries is almost $696 billion. And you also know that this outstanding debt, has increased significantly because the states have development needs that are very important. And today, we have seen that between 2008 and 2018 and even until 2019, the outstanding debt to GDP has almost doubled, from 28% to 56%. And today, even some states are approaching 70%. For a very simple reason, the states have very important investment needs. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine war, the states, because of inflation, are obliged today, and unfortunately for them, to subsidize some necessary product, but also the question of energy.
So, what if the problem in fact stemmed from loans, which are unprofitable for economies in the medium term?
You know that this is the basic problem of the African economy. African countries get into debt, but unfortunately do not put the debt where it should be. This is a fundamental element. As you know, a recent World Bank study revealed that 7.5% of the credit granted by the World Bank to developing countries were diverted to tax havens, and this is a very important element to highlight in the analysis. The second thing is that, as you know, this issue of inflation is straining government budgets to the point where these countries have no room for maneuver today to invest as they should.
What do you recommend in order to get out of the economic rut?
Firstly, penalties and interest on arrears must be abandoned. Secondly, normal interest should be converted into capital to allow donors to monitor the governance of these projects. And then third, reschedule the rest over a much longer period. So that is the first solution I see. The second solution is that, in the framework of what we call financial engineering, these countries must be able to reprofile their debt. That is, to refinance the outstanding debt on much more occasional terms. And finally, the third thing I see is in terms of future. The state must take on more debt at much more occasional rate, but at the same time use them to finance viable projects.
Thank you, Sir Magaigai.
Thank you very much, Madam Lago.
My second guest, Dr. Lebinda Abazoka from the University of Zambia, doesn't believe restructuring the debt is the solution.
It can be a solution because even if we restructure, our population is growing. Our population needs schools, hospitals. Our population needs to create jobs. So if there's no money to create jobs, there's no market to consume goods, things are very expensive. You are not going to create industry. So what the intervention that Africa needs now is to create industry, to ensure that Africa is not just exporting raw materials. So the IMF and the World Bank, for them to remain relevant for Africa, they should come up with policies of helping their member states in Africa to start creating jobs in the private sector. Africa can receive anything from anywhere in the world, but Africa cannot send because, one, health conditions, two, because they say maybe the quality standards are not being met, but anything with whether high quality, low quality is coming to Africa.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
We now head to Nigeria. One of the most industrialized economies on the continent faces enormous challenges in terms of electricity supply, infrastructure, and access to finance. All these are crippling startups and businesses. A forum on industrialization in the next decade was an opportunity to look for solutions to this plight.
Africa's biggest economy and one of the continent's major startup hubs, Nigeria is seeing the biggest number of closures of startups and some industries, followed by Kenya and South Africa, according to a joint report by WeTracker and Green Tech Capital. Manufacturers met in Lagos to discuss ways to move forward.
Multiple regulations of the industry by different government agencies resulting in multiplicity of charges also constitute a major challenge.
All the factors and parameters that they are looking at on ease of doing business, they are not the real issue. The real issues has to do with roads, of linking from market and other things, taking raw materials from the source to the industry.
One key problem is electricity, power generation. That is affecting the sector.
The president of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mansour Ahmed, says the body plays its part to help sustain small-scale businesses, startups and industries in the country.
Our program in the Manufacturers Association is to first of all ensure that those who are already producing in Nigeria are helped as much as possible, are supported as much as possible to remain in Nigeria. And then we can now attract more people to come into Nigeria.
Nigeria's economic outlook remains uncertain and threatened by many issues, including lower than expected oil production due to technical inefficiencies and increased insecurity.
Over a 10-year span, the total international bandwidth capacity in Africa has increased 50-fold and the number of cell phone subscribers has doubled. Yet, large areas lack access to network coverage. In Kigali, experts have been working on the subject. Here is the report by Diana Eriza.
This meeting comes at a time when African countries are trying to bridge the gap of the unconnected in line with having productive discussions with broadband sellers. According to GSMA mobile economy statistics, in 2021, the usage gap stood at 3.2 billion people, or 41% of the global population. Part of the MWC Africa 2022 is the 5G Summit, which will deep dive into commercial 5G services, with a particular focus on Africa, where the journey of 5G has begun, with stakeholders taking steps to accelerate the transition to 5G.
Every 10 years, the mobile goes through a G. So 2020 is the decade of 5G, or MT 2020. So it's not taken long, it's on time. I mean, the more developed countries are just now beginning to roll out and uptake. We should have the policies in place. The technology will be mature enough for Africa to adopt. My perspective is that this is correct timing for us, but we just need to leverage the experiences of other regions, not to make the same mistakes they have made, and be able to accelerate our adoption.
As the world emerges from the pandemic and social and economic activities begin to recover, connectivity will continue to play a vital role in the way people live and businesses operate.
Africa, I think, is definitely headed in the right direction. The investors, the operators are investing a lot of money and resources. They're building their networks. They're improving their networks. They've gone from 2G to 3G to 4G, and increasingly we're beginning to see 5G deployments in Africa, and this will have an impact on financial inclusion.
Policy measures to support network investments and affordability for digital services for consumers has been called upon as an attempt to improve mobile connectivity in the Sub-Saharan Africa.
Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you soon in Business Africa.